All right, hominids, I got a bit of a different one for you this time. Today, we're going to be taking a look at each and every division in the UFC and ranking them in order from worst to best. This is a topic that's been covered by channels in the past, and I'm not exactly reinventing the wheel here. Some may claim this subject is a dead horse that I'm about to lay into with a metal pipe, but to them, I say you can kindly suck my dick and then suck my balls right after while you're at it. I just got here. I want to do some videos like this to make you guys understand more of my baseline opinions. So we're going to be starting from the bottom with the foulest, smelliest division and working our way to what I consider to be the best. My criteria is going to be based mostly on how alive each weight class feels. Which ones have the hungriest batch of contenders, which ones have the brightest prospects, the most active champions, the most intriguing matchups, all will be considered. To me, fresh matchups is what makes a division great, and there are a good few of them that are stacked with them. And on the other side of that coin, there are a couple that are staler than carpet cereal, where you couldn't be bothered to keep up with it for the life of you. Someone could hold a bayonet to your chest and demand you pay attention to this weight class, and you'd embrace the tip of the blade. They are not all created equal for sure, and many of them can switch places drastically down to how things play out over time. Some placements would have looked entirely different coming from me a year ago. And there may be some placements on this list that will aggravate or confuse some people, but try to bear in mind that I'm considering divisions as a whole rather than just the top 15 or whoever's at the top is champ. And also bear in mind that this is just my humble onion. You have your own onion. Everyone's got onions. Don't get mad at mine. Look at it. It's harmless. Anyways, let's get into this. The worst UFC division is women's bantamweight. Okay, yeah, this isn't going to be all that shocking to people, I don't imagine. The women's bantamweight division is a big heaping glop of slime and goo and ooze. I have never cared about anything less in my life. It used to be the marquee women's weight class back in the day when Ronda Mania was going on. Rousey was out there twisting bitches into pretzels and shot into the stratosphere. Out of that came the WMMA GOAT, Amanda Nunes. She embarrassed Rousey badly by clubbing her to pieces and proceeded to go on a historic reign. She ruled over 135 with an iron fist for the better part of the next decade, smashing everyone and everything in sight. The highlights of her championship run were probably the Cyborg Brawl and the Shevchenko wins, but honestly, she was the only thing keeping this whole thing afloat. Everyone liked Amanda Nunes, but let's not pretend that it was all that exciting during the back half of her reign either. She was just clearly a cut above the rest, and it never even really came close. But at least she was a big enough name that people actually gave a shit. There was a temporary blip of excitement when Pena shocked the world by beating her in an upset. But this is one of the only cases where a fighter saying they had an off night didn't feel like a lame excuse. Because first of all, it was truly shocking seeing Nunes get lit up by this goofy ass striking. And second of all, she brutalized Pena in the rematch and left no doubt of who the better fighter was. And once she retired one fight later, it basically sentenced this division to death. No one, and I mean zero people, gave a bonobo's ballsack about Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Buena Silva for the vacant belt. No one cared. And then when Pena took the belt off Pennington in what some will call a robbery, no one really cared about that either. No one is watching this willingly unless they have a TV screen in the shitter. Right now, the only saving grace in this weight class is Kayla Harrison, who will most likely be champ for too long. She's exciting, a physical specimen, has charisma, and talks shit to sell fights. But that's one intriguing raft in a sea of boring. The only other name people really know about here is Eileen Perez, and I don't feel like explaining why. Number 10, women's flyweight. I hate to do it to them, but it's another women's division up next. It's certainly light years ahead of bantamweight. Let's just get that out the way. At least the title picture is competitive here, and there are some up-and-comers that are something. There are at the very least some new matchups for the winner of Shevchenko versus Fiorot to face once that's done and dusted, like Erin Blanchfield, Macy Barber, Natalia Silva. Not to say they're very exciting matchups, but it's better than nothing. And you can sell a Shevchenko versus Nami Nunes fight well if that ever happens. Rose is definitely not the same fighter she used to be, but still, I don't know. I have even less to say about this division somehow, despite it being less shitty than bantamweight. The only real interesting thing you could do here is bring Zhang Weili up for a double champ fight against the Bullet, but while that would be sick, I kind of like Weili as champ down to strawweight, and the UFC doesn't want champs going up and leaving the divisions log jammed anymore. So basically, she'd have to vacate if she wanted to go up. So maybe not. And it's sad that the only fun thing I can think of here is for a champ from a better division to come up and breathe life into this one. It's just so whatever. It's a big bunch of nothing. Bad shit ass division. Number 9, heavyweight. Oh boy, now we're on to one of the men's classes. And this might not be too shocking either, given I literally already made a video talking at length about what a stinking carcass of a division this one is, but I'll harp on it some more. This list was kind of tough in some places for me to make my mind up, but it's not a challenge for me at all to say this one is the smelliest. I'm largely going to be covering what I covered in that video already, but I'll hit it rapid fire. John Jones is holding the belt hostage with no word on defending against his interim champ, Tom Aspinall, who's already defended his interim belt and odds are will have to defend it again. The top 5 is decent but aimless, as the latest performances from each of them have been pretty bogus. The back half of the top 10 is full of boring nothings who've lost to everyone. Delson Ameda is the only interesting contender for Aspinall or Jones. Everyone else has no chance. Tai Tuivasa is on a 5-fight skid, but is still ranked at number 10 somehow. Jamil Gaziev is the only one up-and-comer with any hype on his name, and that is purely because he is a big blobular meme. And in place of huge specimens with Adonis builds exchanging world-ending hooks with one another, with a couple exceptions, we have blooded middleweights who would lose to Nacho Libre in a street fight. I'm being a tad hyperbolic, of course. I'm aware all of these guys are dangerous, but from an entertainment perspective, heavyweight is shit from a butt. One thing people pointed out in my comments on the video was more or less an explanation for why it's so shit. That's because most dudes built like skyscrapers tend to go into other sports that are far more lucrative than the nickels and pocket lint Dana White pays his fighters, and I think that makes sense. Still, that doesn't make this division any less rotten. One bright spot that I will say is we're seeing more and more light heavyweights move up and try their shot with the big guys like I said they should. Kennedy Nzechukwu is now ranked in the top 15. Vitor Petrino had a heavyweight matchup that fell through, but I imagine they'll book him another one. And Ryan Spann is booked to take on Waldo Cortez Acosta this weekend. Yes, more of that, please. Taliesin Shera is also ranked now, and despite me having doubts, because we didn't know how good he was going in, I'm confident he'll smash through a good few contenders. So in a year's time, maybe it won't be so bad. But for now, it's anus. Number 8, strawweight. I know it sucks to have every women's division towards the bottom of the list, and I certainly wanted to place this one higher if I could, but that wouldn't be very honest. Strawweight is the only decent women's weight class. It's always been pretty good by comparison in general, to be honest. Joanna Jacek was a ruthless champ at her height, and her first bout with Zhang Weili is one of the best fights ever. I'm gonna sound like an asshole here, but a lot of the time we don't get bloody wars with the ladies like that. It can be kind of rough to watch sometimes. But these two both laid siege to each other's brain cells in this one. Banger. Nowadays, it's still in pretty decent shape with Weili getting her belt back. It was in Fucksville, frankly, after that horrific Namajunas Esparza fight. But thank God Weili came back in to shake things up again. All the homies love Zhang Weili. She's a beast. I don't personally believe that a division's quality is solely based on whoever's champ, but it definitely helps. And her presence at the top gives 115 more shine than the other two. The contenders are pretty decent coming up, and we get most of our fun WMMA fights from strawweight, I feel like. But in saying that, it's still not amazing. I'm sorry. I'm a big puckering asshole, I know, but it's just not the most exciting thing in the world. And if Weili wasn't champ, I think I would care a lot less. Flyweight. I will be honest, I don't hate flyweight. I get why people do. It's shallower than other men's divisions and is definitely one of the weaker ones, but I can't think of many fights down there that I've watched recently that weren't sick. Given how small these guys are, they have to be as fast and as skilled as possible to make it into the rankings and clamor towards the belt. With a few exceptions like this fucking dude, the majority of the time these fights are scrappy and fan friendly. So why is it so low? Yeah, the champ actually drags this one down a fair bit, I'm afraid to say. Which isn't his fault. It's kind of a similar situation to when DJ was champ. There's just no one for this guy to fight that he hasn't beaten already. While we had 1,000 fights between Moreno and Figgy, which was admittedly a pretty fun time in the division actually, Pantoja was just out here beating everyone else. By the time he got the belt off Moreno later, which was his 3rd fight with him by the way, there was almost no one to pick from that would be fresh. His first defense was a rematch against Brandon Royval, which was warranted, but no one was exactly dying to see it, and it definitely didn't help that it was a serious dud. After that, they were truly grasping at straws when they matched him up against number 10 Steve Erceg, who at the time was a nobody. I'm sorry, a complete nobody. He's gone on to be a bit of a fan favorite since then, especially since this fight with Pantoja was pretty damn good, and a lot of people think he should have won it too. But at the time, it was like, what the fuck? And then after that, the UFC goes and brings in Kai Asakura from Ryzen to get an immediate title shot, who proceeded to lose. Don't get me wrong, Pantoja's underrated in terms of how fun he is and deserves respect, but literally any one of these guys beating him would have been better for the division. Now it's just, what do we even do? The only one that has any zing on it is a Manel Kopp fight, which I'd actually be decently interested in seeing since the first one was pretty close and Kopp's been on fire recently. Besides that, it is bone dry. I don't need to see him fight Kai Kara France again, or either of the Brandons or Alex Perez. I am not kidding when I say that Pantoja vacating and going up to fight Merab would save this division. We could get a fresh champ in there who hasn't beaten everyone already, and there would be some kind of intrigue again. To clarify, there's nothing wrong with a dominant champ on a long streak, but For this dude's entire reign, there hasn't been a single logical matchup where you can imagine him losing. Just no hype, no zing, nothing. The saving grace at 125 for me, though, is there are a lot of up-and-comers to look out for. Got Tatsuro Taira, Joshua Man, Rei Tsuruya, Kaya Sakura, and most recently Ramazan Temirov coming over from PFL, and that's just a few. And a lot of the established names who have been here for a while are all fun to watch. It isn't a horrible division, honestly, but the title picture feeling like such a waste of time drags it down significantly. Number 6, Featherweight, smack dab in the middle. Now, here's where things start to get a bit tricky. It was kind of hard to place the top half of this list, and I honestly thought about placing this one higher. If Ilia Topuria was staying in as champ, and we had things like the Volk rematch, Diego Lopez and Movsar Evloev on the horizon, giving up-and-coming killers like John Silva, Joanderson Brito, or Yusuf Salal to clamor their way towards the belt themselves, it would get bumped up a few spots. I'm not gonna lie. I love Volk, and it was devastating seeing it done that bad, but it was empirically a good thing for the division. It moved things along. This new era was then solidified by Ilia being the first person to knock out Max Holloway, which was also rough for the average UFC fan, but again, it signaled a changing of the guard of sorts. Despite the fact that this dude fights once every 5 years, it feels like, Topuria is such a sick fighter to watch, and I love his whole brand. The blistering boxing style, the knockouts, the walkout song, the rose thing, drinking the wine during the weight cuts. He's just a cool ass champion. I don't know. And besides that, there are some matchups in the works that I personally really wanted to see. And if you got past those, and let's say Patricio Pitbull comes in and beats Yair Rodriguez, who doesn't want to see that fight? Or if Yair wins, gets another win, goes to the title, that's sellable, that's fun. But in saying all that, Topuria is vacating his belt to go up to 155. And in his place, Volk and Lopez are fighting for the vacancy, which is cool, but not nearly as cool. I guess it would be a similar situation if Lopez becomes champ, but I'm a little less enthused about a second Volk run personally. We've already seen it. We've seen that. I'll still take it. I love the guy, but I was ready for that Topuria run, man. Oh well. Besides that, the division is just pretty good. Nothing amazing, but there are a few cool prospects making their way up, and it's heating up a bit. I'd say Featherweight is basically your standard normal division, just run of the mill. Not bad, not outstanding. Number 5. Light heavyweight. I would not have put this one this high a couple years ago. It was such a skull-numbing mess with the hot potato nonsense with the belt that it felt like it was cursed. But since Pereira came in, got the belt, and beat both guys who had to vacate, things have smoothed out immensely. I don't think it's a stretch to say that he is easily our most exciting, most active champion. Fights everyone, does it with style, and wait a minute. Ankh just got the belt. That's not fun. I was one of the people campaigning for the Ankalaev fight a year ago, as I like seeing the best fight the best. So we got that. Ankh is the best of 205, yes, but I can't lie, this is a lot less exciting. It doesn't make the rest of the division that much worse, but it takes a bit of the shine away. Pereira main events have become like a staple of the UFC in the last year. Always exciting, always a knockout, and then Ankh goes in there and just about wins the belt with both guys kind of doing nothing. Ugh. They'll do the rematch and we'll see who comes out on top, so we'll just have to wait for now. As for the rest of the fighters, this is an underrated weight class in terms of how fan-friendly basically every matchup is. I've always held the opinion that this is the true heavyweight division because these guys can all crack while being in impressive shape. It's mostly consisting of strikers too, so you can put any two guys together in a randomizer and you'll get a fun stylistic matchup. And Yuri Prohaska's existence in the rankings bumps it up a few notches alone. This dude is a fighting game character. So yeah, I'd say light heavyweight is in the best place it's been in for the past half decade. It was certainly a stinker in recent times, but I kind of dig it now. Number 4. Bantamweight. Okay, here's where I'm gonna start getting torched. Bantamweight is sort of overrated. I know I said it was contention for being the best one in my video talking about middleweight, but I've kind of changed my mind a little bit. And no, it has nothing to do with Merab becoming champ, but rather just the circumstances with the rankings. Sometimes when we see these matchups play out, it can lead to a bit of an uncertain playing field. I'm gonna kind of just paraphrase what I said in my video on O'Malley versus Merab, but as it is right now, it's not really clear who the next contender should be outside of Petr Yan. And even then, that fight isn't all that interesting because he got 50-45 last time, and I kind of see the same thing happening again. The O'Malley rematch isn't interesting in the slightest and doesn't make sense. Umar just lost, so he's up in the air. Sandhagen and Figueroa are fighting, so the winner of those two is possible, but it would still feel kind of undeserved. Dong and Cejudo basically canceled each other out with that DQ, and yes, I'm calling it a DQ. Chito Vera is on a skid. Rob Font, Rob Font's doing pretty well as basically the prospect killer, and I kind of like him in that role, to be fair, so that, but he isn't going anywhere really. Mario Bautista sucks. They're doing Jose Aldo so dirty by making him act as a stepping stool for up-and-comers. And said up-and-comers aren't all that interesting. It's just kind of right now. You hear Bantamweight and you think of the murderer's row of murderer's rows, and it definitely is that. It's just kind of in an awkward spot. And I can't even really think of that many prospects outside the rankings to get excited about. Peyton Talbot obviously was huge, but that went to the dogs. That's dead now. You know, as I've been saying, it'll unclog itself and will probably be one of the best again in like a year, but right now, it's not my favorite. Number 3, middleweight. This may be my most controversial take so far, but I think middleweight has shapeshifted itself in becoming one of the best. Back in the Adesanya era, the pre-Pereira rivalry, it was a big ol' snooze fest. Champ was boring, contenders were boring, no up-and-comers, fucking boring. It was just flaccid and shit. It was a big bag of wind. But now, DDP is an exciting champ who sells fights while also being a stand-up guy, takes on all comers. Imavov, Chimaev, and Bahalyo are all right there for the next shot, and every single one of those fights is pretty sick. Especially the Chimaev one. Old heads like Strickland, Izzy, Whitaker, Cannonier are basically forced to fight back down the rankings, which will either solidify their spots or allow fresh blood to get into the mix. Anthony Hernandez is a dark horse that will probably take out one of them, and there are a decent few players licking their chops entering the rankings. Again, I've gone over a lot of this stuff in my video about middleweight, and I'm trying to refrain from repeating myself, so go watch that one if you want more elaboration. I just think we're heading into more uncharted waters at 185, and I love that shit. Number 2, welterweight. This very nearly got the top spot, and I think it's clear at this point what ended up snagging it. It was razor close for me because 170 is unreasonably stacked. Shavkat Rakhmonov, JDM, Joaquin Buckley, Ian Gary, Sean Brady, Gilbert Burns, Jeff Neal, Michael Morales, Carlos Prates, MVP. Now there are some outliers like Usman who disappeared from the face of the earth. Wonder Boy, who's getting pretty old and will probably be out the door soon. Colby Covington, who sucks ass. And Leon Edwards, who possesses the charisma of a slab of concrete and had a shite-ass championship reign. So it's not all ruthless and badass and box office, but for the most part, for me, it very much is. So many killers in there just knifing each other to climb up. The other issue is Bilal Muhammad's champ. He won it fair and square, crazy win streak. And I think he deserves respect for that much. And I actually think he's an underrated fight salesman. But man, he is just so goddamn boring to watch, dude. When people say grappling is boring and that the ref should just stand them up and make them strike, we all agree that the appropriate response to that is to take your glove off and smack them in the face. But this guy's style is grappling at its worst. No brutal ground and pound, not syncing up submissions, just control time. Wet blanketing. Boring, soul-sucking, mind-melting, wet blanketing. It was cool seeing him dethrone Edwards, who was about as boring, but in the striking department. Plus, it's just always cool seeing an underdog beat the odds. But you are a contrarian hack if you try to tell me you're excited for this guy's potential reign. Literally any other contender would be more watchable as a champ. So it doesn't drag it down too much. It's still number 2, but it might be number 1 if not for that. Most eyeballs are on these title fights, so if the title fights are uninspired, no one cares. It will reflect negatively on the rest of the weight class. And I'll just say this, we had it so good with Kamaru Usman, man. We didn't know what we had until it was gone. And the best weight class in the UFC, in my onion, is lightweight. Of course, yes, it's lightweight. It's obviously lightweight. I will say though, I'm a little surprised myself that it landed here, as I've held the opinion in the past that the infamous logjam at the top has made things kind of stagnant in recent years. But even with that considered, it's still the best. It's the most talent stacked, the fights in it are generally the most entertaining, the contenders are the most versatile, and said logjam has existed for so long because Oliveira, Gaethje, and Poirier keep beating up all the prospects. Surukian was the only one to claw through that wall. Islam Makhachev is an awesome champ, even if it took me a while to accept him after seeing my boy Charles get thwomped. I like that he's intent on sticking around and genuinely doesn't give a shit who they make him fight. He knows he's the best. And with Dan Hooker having a late career resurgence, Max Holloway moving up permanently, and Topuria coming up as well, holy shit. That's honestly what tipped it over for me. I know Max probably wasn't too happy about seeing the guy that just knocked him out follow him up a weight class, but both of them are such a huge shakeup at the top 5. And Dan Hooker versus any of them is bloody box office, even if he will probably lose. You got Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler, which is going to be a bit of a circus, but it's all good fun. Renato Moicano is like Colby Covington if he was likable. Fiziev is back in the mix, and that guy also belongs next to Yuri on the fighting game character select screen. Ignacio Bahamondes, Daniel Zellhuber, Esteban Ribovic, Mauricio Rufy, and Joel Alvarez are all bloodthirsty nightmares, either ranked at the bottom or just outside the rankings. It's hard to pick against lightweight, man. It's always been in contention for the best, but I think it still holds that title for me. So there you have it. There's my list. Feel free to call me a big smelly bitch in the comments if you think I'm wrong or whatever. See ya.